All right, well, it's 5 o'clock. Jeff, could you please turn on the recording?
We are recorded.
Wonderful. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Jeff, could I impose upon you to call the roll, please?
Dennis,
Here.
Vidar,
Here.
John,
Here.
Sam,
Here.
Jerry.
Yes, here. Very good. Gentlemen, I apologize. Katie, our administrative assistant, went home sick today, so we don't have printed agendas for you. But I did send the agenda out last week. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda that you'd like to make at this time? There being none, next thing on our agenda is citizen public comment. We have anybody that wishes to make a comment has 3 minutes to address us.
Time's getting shorter.
Just want to say I'm glad to see everybody's here tonight. Thank you for this shortened time. But I'm just here to encourage you as you continue to work on the vegetation management policy for the city of Manistee that will help people who either has or will have a view opportunity to water in this great peninsula city that is known as Manistee. These are some of the opportunities that people come here to Manistee for, and we shouldn't allow them to be taken away just because the only reason you can trim a limb is for safety or for the fact that it's dying. So as you have heard before, I have called 9 other cities along the coast, and Manistee seems to be the only one that doesn't allow a very simple, yes, go ahead. We're all for it. You know, we understand why you want to maintain your view of Lake Michigan. Go cut it yourself, they have said. Some have said $250, we'll get it done for you. We've had people go to the deck with the tree commission and they see the issue and they've stood there and watched them trim the limb so that the view can be retained or brought back. So I'm just hoping that for all the citizens of Manistee, the businesses along the river, condo owners on Lake Manistee, all these people would be up in arms if all of a sudden on public property, trees just grew up and took their view away. So I think that maintaining view issue, maintaining and through urban forests is something that Manistee really needs to address. So I'm hoping that you will consider this policy. If you have one tonight, I didn't see it, but I sent up a couple copies, a couple versions to the subcommittee, so hopefully you've seen those, and if you feel like it's worth considering, those options are out there. I have copies of them with me if you didn't get them offline before the meeting. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next thing on the agenda is approval of minutes from our August 8th meeting. Those minutes were electronically transmitted to you in the past few weeks. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the August 8th meeting? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Next on the agenda is unfinished business. Jeff, could you just provide us a quick update on the tree purchase program and how that's going?
Yes, all the planting is completed with the exception of 2. I'm sorry, with the exception of 3. 2 ended up being extras. 2 neighbors ordered trees for the same spot. So we have 2 extras. Our intention is to incorporate and plant those at Morton Park as part of the Parks Commission's project to upgrade that facility. And then the one remaining one, the homeowner would like it replaced or placed where a pre-existing tree was. So is waiting for the stump to be ground. And so the landscaper temporarily planted it and then we'll replant it. And we're expecting that the stump grinding to begin next week.
Oh, good. Is there any questions from the commission members or observations that you have about our tree planting
I heard a lot of good things. People were really excited about I talked to a lot of people that had trees planted, and they were very pleased with the size of the trees and the crews that came in, and they loved it that they were put in and they were bagged, and then which they need to do.
I heard a lot of positive things too, but some of the we had a few issues. So one of the things that I want to recommend that we all do next year is there are some criteria of where the trees can be planted, a distance from an intersection, that sort of thing. And I think we need to publish those, or as soon as people purchase them, that we make them aware earlier in the process, because some people staked out their location and it didn't conform, and then there was a few issues with that we worked out. But I just think providing that information sooner in the process will help.
Jeff, the one thing I would say is I've just pulled up the form that you order the tree with. It does say must be located on city property right away. Minimum 3 feet from the sidewalk, street curb, driveway, or water line. 30 feet from the nearest tree in a city right away, and 30 feet from any street intersection. Is there anything else that needs to be added to that?
Well, I'm just saying we need to draw more attention to that, maybe in our advertisements or something.
Yeah, well, it's right there.
Yeah.
So, yes, you had.
I was just gonna say, I've run into some people with the bags and how to use the bags. Several people were asking, how do you water the bag? They just put the hose in there, and they said there's nothing going in the bag. So I showed them where the nozzle was.
The hole is, yeah.
Slide.
Right, but it's a little tricky until you do that. And they said, wow, that makes sense now. But those bags, whoever got the patent on those things and so on, I think they probably came out of Florida. Whoever put those together, it's quite a marvel.
Yeah.
Quite a
Yeah,
marvel.
it's interesting. I spent quite a bit of time on a university campus, and it's interesting how all of their new stuff, that's what they use, even trees that are stressing. And I've heard that trees are going through a false fall right now because of the lack of rain, and so they've experienced a lot of stress and early turning. But I noticed that the university put a lot of those bags out to try to help them along, so I'm glad we're incorporating them.
Well, they really did. Again, the selection of the trees are just beautiful. They're really nice, good quality, that are going to, again, with a little bit of care from the homeowners, will take off and go. So, very good. Any other questions about the tree planting? All right. Well, now it's time for the report from the special committee that we assigned to review the Harbor Springs Vegetation Management Plan. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you, Jerry,
Okay.
and to bring us up to speed.
I think everybody's got a copy here, right?
Yeah.
The only one that I'm gonna give an extra copy to is Jeff over here. I was gonna drive out to your place today and give it to you, but I saw you down on First Street Beach working away down there.
Thank you.
So that's just what I gave the folks up here. Some extras in there. The extras you can throw away if you want. Okay, I believe everybody's had a chance to take a look at it. And we tried to keep it pretty simple and straightforward. Pretty simple and straightforward, and not too complicated. And also try to provide a means to get it started. So unless there's some comments or some radical changes to it, I propose we let it set and try to move forward with it.
So there's a motion on the floor coming from the committee. Since it's coming from the committee, it will not require a second, but to accept the recommendations from the special committee that's been appointed for this vegetation management plan. So
Okay.
that's on the floor, and now we're open for discussion. I've just got a couple of points that I'd like to ask. Gentlemen, or Jerry, I'm going to address this to you, and you can call on any of your committee members as you see fit too to help, but how does someone initiate a request to trim a tree for view shed?
Fill out the request form,
Okay,
pages, the second portion of this, it's a request form. Fill it out, describe what you are wanting to change to enhance your view, and put a deposit down, and then it moves to the Department of Public Works, and then they do move it forward to the tree commission.
so
But it all starts with a form, just like it does for trimming and tree removal.
this is a separate form.
This is a separate form, and I might mention that what I'm trying to do, or what we talked about, is adding this to the tree ordinance. And if you saw some of my other notes in there suggesting, move it over to the tree ordinance as an addition to it. And,
6, 1, and 2, and 7.
and where have I got that? I've got it all laid out there someplace, suggested changes and so on.
Here you go.
I've got it here.
Got it?
Right. Yeah, create a new paragraph, such as paragraph 1026.2 for this new site, view site management document. And then the request form, it's another paragraph 1026.13. And
What is the upfront deposit requirement?
the upfront deposit requirement is $500.
500?
Right, and we did that because, you know, the city is going to go ahead and call for the expert to go ahead and start checking this out and writing up a plan. And so it's some earnest money to cover the costs that the city is initially going to be incurring. So everything is focused through the city and back up to the tree council, or the tree commission. From that route versus a person out there, us, James Hughes citizen or whatever it is, who having the person to write up a plan and everything else. This goes back to the Department of Public Works and the tree commission as the base to start it.
Okay.
And the deposit covers some of the costs.
What happens if the view shed request is denied? What happens to the $500?
Whatever is not the cost, or the cost that the city has already spent will be retained to cover their costs, and anything left of the $500 deposits will be returned to the citizen.
Jeff, is that feasible for your Department of Public Works? You know, what would be your vision for who is the person that goes out there and checks this out? Who would that
It'd
be?
be a horticulturist or somebody else, or a tree specialist, somebody that has, you know, the expertise to go out and look at the view side problem and so on.
Okay, so this would not be a guy on your staff?
I wasn't listening to the conversation. This is the first I've seen it, so I was trying to read through it.
So this would not be an employee?
What I've read so far is that the Public Works would hire a qualified person to make that determination and inspection.
Okay. Does that seem feasible to you, Jeff?
I haven't read through this, so I don't want to throw out any opinions.
I'm just asking at one point, you know, the request comes in, $500 check is stapled to it, and then the next step is for you or somebody on your staff to get somebody out there to, you know, tree specialist. You know, we're fortunate, we've got Josh Shields, you know, that is volunteering to help us, but, you know, this may be beyond that, in my opinion. I don't know.
That's correct, it may be beyond that, because in our readers, you know, might cost $300 up front to go out and do an initial review and so on, and that's what the $500 deposit is for,
Okay.
to cover that cost.
So this would be like to do the estimate.
Right.
We wouldn't want him to go out there for free.
Well, he's not gonna go out there for free. If I was him, I wouldn't go out there for free either. You know,
Three arborists already have. They just
Ma'am,
go out.
I'm sorry, you're out of order.
Just so you know.
This is discussion here. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I don't have any specific knowledge of what they charge,
Yeah,
so I'm not really sure.
okay. I'm of the personal opinion, $500 should cover somebody going out and looking at a tree.
well, I think I've seen some earlier quotes that has crossed through our hands here and so on. In fact, I gave you one a while back, and I think the tab was somewhere around $300 to $400.
So
And I think.
before that, I'm sorry.
Let him ask a question.
What routinely happens with items like this is when there's a dollar amount involved, whether it's a zoning application or a memorial bench, those type of things are on a list of fees that the city council establishes every year during its budget. So I think you could either pick a dollar amount that you believe is fair and would cover it, or we could simply create or get an estimate on something like that from an arborist to get a feeling of whether or not we're in the right ballpark. But I think whether or not it's high or it's low in the annual budget process, that can be adjusted to reflect whatever the current cost is.
My personal feeling is that I like the $500 number, because that's going to prevent this.
Exactly.
I think if anybody's charging more than that, they go out there, they
Yeah.
get raped over
I think the $500 is probably going to end up on the middle, right in the ballpark or on the low side.
Yeah.
Jeff, just addressing what your concern was there about the city council budget, they really wouldn't have to look at this because it's coming from the homeowner to have it done. They don't really have to set anything aside right now, correct?
Yeah.
No, but my point is that during the budget process,
Right.
the city council adopts a schedule of fees, and this would eventually end up as one of the schedule of fees.
Right.
So the same way that we charge a homeowner or a property owner for buying a tree, that dollar amount is set in the budget on an annual basis. So if we so right now those trees cost us, say $280 a piece, and we're charging them $50 a piece. During the budget process, you could make a recommendation, council could then raise that rate to 60 or 100, and that's where it's reflected and approved on an annual basis. So if your recommendation is 500 and council seems like that's reasonable, that would be added to the schedule of fees, and then on an annual basis, it can be updated, whether that's too high, too low. I understand. I think the 2 points that I heard were, number one, we want to make sure we cover the cost internally. Number two, you wanted to be an investment by the property owner so that we don't get 50 requests every year and there's no skin in that
We
game.
just want to prevent the frivolous requests.
Sure.
Correct.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. So then the arborist looks at it and then reports to who? Back to us here on the tree commission?
Reports, brings it back to the Department of Public Works.
Okay.
And then the Department of Public Works will bring it back to the tree commission, us, to review it. And if it looks good to them, they bring it back to the Department of Public Works to go ahead and present it to the citizens, present it, or fill out the form to begin with. And if that looks okay, it sends all back up to the tree commission and the city park commission, or if they're involved in it someplace or another. And if everybody approves of it, the Department of Public Works Director will go ahead and schedule and execute the work as outlined in the plan. And then all costs above and beyond the 500 will be transferred back to the home.
So in other words, once it gets approved by this group here, it would just be just like a trim request now, a trim or removal request. Be done by your staff, Jeff,
Very similar.
right?
Very similar.
Peter?
No, there is also a paragraph or a sentence in there that lets the applicant review the plan.
Correct.
So that the applicant could say at that point, no, I don't want to go forward with this, or yes, I want to go forward with it.
Okay, so the arborist looks at it, I'm just gonna use the term arborist, the arborist looks at it, says, okay, it won't harm the tree to cut this limb, that's fine. It comes back to us, we review it, we say, okay, now we go back to the applicant and say, here it is. And should the arborist provide us at that time with with a kind of a firm estimate of what it would cost to take it down, or does it go back to your employees to take it down? That's my question.
If you're asking me to interpret this, I haven't read it.
No,
To be able to do
understand. But I'm just asking you to answer the question as, we're discussing it right now. I'm not gonna, no, it's my opinion that a city-owned tree should be worked on by city employees. That's my personal opinion. Now, that's open for discussion. But that's where I think it should be. And then my next question is, can you cover that cost? Is it a hardship for you to say, this took 6 man-hours and this much equipment to do? I mean, is that?
I don't think there's a hardship in the time it would require, no.
Okay.
Again, what the Department of Works Director would do based on the report that the arborist put together and so on. And if you wanted to go ahead and put together an estimate and the Department of Public Works wanted to use that estimate, so be it. But if there is no dollar involved for removal or sprucing up or trimming of it, the Department of Public Works Director will put a cost to that. And that will be then applied to the total cost of the project. And that will be above and beyond the $500, which at this point in time, the citizen has approved the plan and said go forward with it.
So if I understand that, the citizen makes a request,
Correct,
pays the $500 deposit.
correct,
Then the Public Works engages an expert.
correct.
The expert does a review. The expert makes a recommendation. At that point, the Public Works creates an estimate to implement the recommendation. The recommendation and the estimate is reviewed with the property owner.
Comes here.
And it comes back here.
Comes here first.
Well, I would think would go to the property owner to decide whether they want to proceed at that point or not.
What we got is that we've got the arborist's report as to what needs to be done. And then you review it, the Department of Public Director reviews it and brings it back to the tree commission to redo it.
Okay.
If everything looks good, then you can add some more costs on it to implement what the arborist did. And then we all agree, and then we bring it back to the citizen. And if the citizen at that time says, yes, I want to continue and proceed with that, with the understanding that it's going beyond the $500 or it's going to be less than the $500 already deposited, and that's when it goes forward. And when they say yes, it goes back to the tree commission, and you report as to what was agreed upon. The tree commission says go forward, and then you go ahead and execute the plan.
Sounds good to me. There's one thing just reading here, guys, explain to me where it says, the citizen says, I agree to post a lien on my property to ensure the city's recovery of all costs for the cost of all work as outlined in the plan and all costs associated with restoration of unapproved damage or injury to vegetation. I read that as a citizen and I'd go, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well,
Well,
for
that's
protection of payment, I think you prepay,
correct.
Yeah.
and then that takes that issue out.
So do we need that statement? Do we need that?
Yes, we do, because we don't know whether the cost is gonna exceed the $500. And once you go ahead and do the project and go over there, and all of a sudden you see the cost is $750, and if the citizen hasn't approved for this, and says, well, I don't care if it's $750, I already put $500, I'm not paying the other $250, then the city's gonna be out of some money there.
Well, the only way that I would, let's just say it was, make this as simple as possible. Let's say an arborist says, remove the tree. Then I go to my staff and say, to remove that tree, what are we doing here? It's gonna take 4 guys, 8 hours, and we've already got, our rates are set
Correct.
by the state of Michigan, so I can calculate that out. It's gonna be $750.
Correct.
I don't think we should run that on a time and material. I think it's $750. They prepay. When they prepay, then we go do the work. And then you eliminate the collection issue, you eliminate,
No work until you get the pay.
correct.
Yeah.
I mean, that's similar to how we do utility connections and road breakage. Road breakage is a deposit because you never know how much road you're gonna have to open up, or they're gonna have to open up. But the other fees are set and they cannot proceed until they've paid for it and have a receipt. I think that'd be cleaner. But if you proceeded with what your recommendation is, the city always has a right to lien city property. If you have an outstanding city bill or invoice, we can put that on the tax roll for collections. So I think we've got protection there anyway.
So what you're saying is when we talk about that, we should drop that off. Because everything is gonna be.
I'm very uncomfortable making any comments on this because I haven't read it.
Okay.
I've learned that you need to read the whole document,
No,
and then,
I understand.
because I don't want to just pick and choose on stuff and miss something.
Dennis, you have-
That last initial part where we do touch on that, on the lien part of the second page, the last, I agree to post a lien on my property. First of all, the way it reads, the citizen will post a lien on my property.
Yeah,
Okay, I think what we need to do is say, I understand the city can post, we gotta change the wording of that, a little bit, that first few words. I understand the city can put a lien on my property, we cover costs, that's all. We just gotta take a few of that a little bit out. It just isn't really quite worded based on what you said there. It almost sounds like I'm gonna agree to put a lien on my own property.
I don't know how to do that.
Right, you won't do that. That just needs to change wording over here.
You have an escape clause sort of like that in here where the citizen says, you know what, I don't want to do this, and then they can pay up whatever.
Correct. When you go through this and read through that, procedures in there, where before we do the final execution, the landowner or the citizen has to agree to go forward. And at that point in time, if they don't agree to go forward, that's when they can drop out and say, hey, I will cover the expenses already incurred by the city for this arborist and so on, take it out of the $500. If there's anything left, so be it. If we've gone over the $500,
Okay.
I agree to that up
See-
front when I put the form for a request together.
Yeah, again, I mean, if you just, this paragraph really is the way to know the city can put a lien if you don't pay it through bill. That's all it's really concerned.
okay.
Right,
I agree, or I understand the city again,
Right,
can or will put a lien on my property if the bill's not paid.
right,
That's
So
all.
let's change the wording there.
right.
By the way, everything that we're talking about, if we approve this today as the commission, it has to go to the city attorney, it has to go to the city council for approval.
And it has to go some other places, I don't know where, to get it incorporated into chapter 1026, the ordinance.
Right.
And
That's a whole nother process.
so it's got-
So there's a couple, there's a couple ways that this can go, and I would, you're correct. First of all, I would like to do a review of it.
Yes.
The city attorney's going to need to do a review of it. Part of the attorney review will be what's the best vehicle to implement this. Is it a council policy? Is it a general policy? Is it an ordinance revision? So, you know, I would want his opinion on how that happens. My thoughts on the whole $500 is to make that a fee and not a deposit. And make sure, and then it becomes our responsibility to make sure that that dollar amount covers our costs as we go through these in the future. But I think if you want people to have skin in the game and not have frivolous requests, I think you set a fee, whatever dollar amount that is, and that's the cost of having it reviewed by a professional. And I think it gets very cumbersome if we have to do deposits and compare invoices and all that. Then I think that once that recommendation is brought forward, I believe that the requesting party should have the first. I don't think it needs to come to the tree commission if the recommendation isn't what the property owner wanted. If the property owner says, I want this tree removed, so I'm going to make my request, and the arborist says, nope, just trim up a couple limbs, that may stop the process right there and it's over. The property owner may say, I just want a couple limbs trimmed. The arborist says the tree needs to be removed. And then when you look at the bill, it went from, gosh, I can't take more than a couple $100 to now I'm looking at a couple $1,000s. Well, I don't want that. And they may stop it right then. So out of respect to the commission's time, I think it would be, and I'm not hard selling this, but for the property owner to make a decision once they receive the recommendation and the estimated cost. And then if it goes forward, it comes maybe through final approval of the tree commission.
I tend to disagree with that approach. I like the approach coming back to the tree commission to see what's going on and have a hand in it so that it looks good and everybody's looked at it, reviewed it, and it sounds reasonable, and then bring it back to the citizen.
So if you're inclined to do that route, then wouldn't, and the tree commission is already engaged an arborist. We had budget money to engage somebody. We went through an RFP, so we have somebody. So why wouldn't I mean, certainly you can do it that way. I was just thinking then I'm trying to eliminate steps to make this easier on staff, on the commission, and on the property owner.
I still think the tree commission should be in there after you make the initial contact with your arborist and come back to see what it is. There might be something in there that's who knows what. But eventually it's going to have to come back. Why not have the tree commission be a first step, be in the front end of it versus on the back end of it? That's my only point. Go ahead.
Peter?
There's one point in here that I think we should address right now because it requires some judgment. In the proposal from our subcommittee, it says about restoring the view. It says the restored view being requested through specific vegetation management must be re-establishment of the view that existed when the current property owner took ownership of the property. The loss of view is due to overgrowth and the lack of trimming. The loss of view is not due to intentional planting of vegetation for erosion control and or beautification of city property by the city. So there is that opens up a room for judgment. We could have a request for, say, removing a tree or removing a limb, and it could turn out that Well, when the property owner took possession of the property, a tree was there and a limb was there. So,
How do you prove what was there at the acquisition of the property?
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's going to be a judgment there, and we need to be clear on who makes that judgment, because the way I see it is that the tree commission could, when an application comes in, the tree commission could say no at the beginning. Right? Because if there wasn't a view and the citizen wants to open up a view, that's not what this is about.
Couldn't they still request to open up the view though? I mean, that's gonna be the,
Of course, they request, but it's denied.
it's denied or you can, I guess.
But coming back to the tree commission, there's another thought too, I think it's along the line with, that I was talking about. Is the request reasonable if we do this? And that comes back to what existed when the property owner is requesting this removal or trimming, whatever it is.
So how do you determine what that was
I mean, I
back
think
at that point?
It's pretty easy, okay, let's put it this way, if a property owner were to buy this property, like a year ago, all that exists right now existed a year ago when the property owner bought it. If there was another view that existed 40 years ago, we're not going back to reestablish something that was 40 years ago.
That's what this reads, though.
No, if you read what I just put in there, we're not trying to reestablish, we're trying to reestablish something that existed when the property owner bought the property,
Right.
not something that existed prior to the purchase of the property.
But how do you go back, say, 10 years or 20 years?
You don't have to go back.
So for example,
You don't go back.
That's what it says.
Well,
Go ahead, Peter.
as an example, if the property owner has owned the property, say, for 12 years, and requests a tree to be removed, the arborist goes out and says, this tree is 40 years old. That's pretty clear, right? The tree was there.
Well, I thought I was understanding what your point was, but it says reestablishment of the view that existed when the current property owner took ownership.
Correct.
So how do you establish what was there when the current owner took ownership
20 years.
versus what is there today?
I see his point too.
When the current property owner took ownership,
Right.
if they took ownership a year ago, that's the view site we're looking at a year ago.
And what if it was 10 years ago?
If they took ownership 10 years ago, hopefully that they have a picture of what they expected 10 years
Yeah, I
ago.
don't think we can hope, Jerry.
But you're not gonna get that, but,
Opens up a can of worms and I don't think we can hope. I mean,
but what the view site was when the property owner took possession of the property. Not what it was 5 years prior to that, or 10 years prior to that. It was what it was when they took possession of the property.
I would say one thing, that the arborist would be able to tell us about that. As Vitor said, that tree or that limb has been in that position for X many years. Okay? The question becomes, why are we making this statement? What is our purpose for that statement?
The purpose is that from the moment the property owner took possession of the property, that is the view site from that moment on that we're talking about, not what existed 20 years ago or 40 years ago.
Okay? What if someone buys a place and says, that tree's in the way of my view to the lake, I want this city to cut that tree down?
then at that point in time, the city can walk in and say, yeah, I'll comply with it. But otherwise, the answer is no. You can't do that. It's kind of like somebody was buying a chunk of property overlooking the lake and says, my God, if I get all these trees out of the way, I'm gonna have a great site out there, so I'm gonna go ahead and buy this property and hope like heck somebody's gonna cut those trees down for me, and my property value is gonna go zipping way up. Well,
Then we would just deny something like
Right.
that though, too. You know what I mean? I don't think we'd approve one guy, somebody cutting down a bunch of trees.
So I'm trying to look at this and anticipate how the city attorney is going to view this. And I think the first thing that the attorney is going to point out is you don't have ownership of view.
Right.
You cannot own view. And I think that section is giving a right to reestablish something that was there at a previous point in time. Because this is talking about public property, right? We're talking about trees on public property.
But I don't know if this needs to be so complicated. Someone buys a house and there is a view. 12 years later, it's grown so that the view is not there anymore. That's when that property owner can request trimming or removal of a tree. But what we want to avoid is that what was said here, that someone buys a property and sees that here is a potential view if we can get this or this or this removed, and then buys the property knowing that there is no or limited, and then comes with a request to open up.
So, and I know what you're saying. So there's a house being built on Monroe Street right now, right? They probably all saw the foundation.
Right.
Right now, it looks through the woods and can't see man-made lake. What you're suggesting is we're trying to avoid them saying, but if the city cut down all the trees, I would have a view of Manistee or man-made lake. You're trying to avoid that type of situation.
Correct.
And I'm just thinking about the next steps, right? So when we've had two instances on man-made where property owners have cut down trees within the park on their own, and just remembering the city attorney's comments, city council's reaction to that, that there is no ownership or rights to that view. You have it or you don't. And that vegetation grew naturally and impeded some of that view, but the property owners had no right, first of all, to take action on public property. And the city was pretty clear that they didn't want that touched, that they wanted that left natural. So I'm just trying to anticipate like how those past experiences would impact this, because I think this would then give them the vehicle to say, well, that tree is only 20 foot tall. The arborist said it's only 20 years old, and I've lived here for 25 years, so therefore it should be removed. I think this opens the door for that, right?
That's correct, but then you have where it comes back to the tree commission here for a discussion, and as to whether it's reasonable and so on, the request right then can be stopped.
So you're retaining the power to then overrule the arborist recommendation?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The arborist's, form and plan and so on is not concrete. It doesn't have to be executed.
Arborist,
Okay.
the arborist is advising us, is this going to damage the tree? Is it, is it?
It's not going to
Well,
be.
then I understand why you would want it to come back to you before.
It's not going to be.
the property
executed
owner.
based on his say-so.
Dennis, are you comfortable with that discussion?
Read this a minute. I'm still thinking, hold on. you know, the words, the restored view requested. What if it's not a restored view, Gary? What if somebody wants a limb trim to give them a view? Well, why can't we do that still? Not take, you know, I mean, we still can have the power of saying yes or no.
Right, right.
But I mean, when you put in the restored view, that means, again, that, you know, when was it taken away? How fast did the tree limb grow? How much else grew with it? You know, you gotta run into all kinds of things, I think. What if we take the wording out, the restored view, and put down the view being requested? Would that read better?
Well,
No, it's being
again,
restored.
going back to,
We're restoring a view that's the request of the landowner or the citizen is requesting to restore the view that existed once upon a time. So we're talking about the requested view that's wanting to be restored.
That's the whole point of this, isn't it?
You're right,
That's the whole point.
restoring.
Right.
so but I think what Dennis is saying, and here's another,
Yeah.
somebody comes and says, I just bought this land. Those trees are in my way. They're on city property. I want them gone. Okay, what happens then?
They can come back to the tree commission.
So we put in a request, as we got it here, to review to correct their site. It comes back through the procedure we kind of set up here. An arborist takes a look at the plan. Once the Department of Public Works looks at it, initiates that, it comes back to us, and this person says, yes, I want to create this view, and the arborist says, yes, you can cut down 4 of those trees out there to create that view. Do we then, as the tree commission, say, yeah, go ahead and do it? Or is that request unreasonable for the goodness of the rest of the citizens in the area to leave those trees? Are we making more than just one person happy? Are we making 20 citizens happy by leaving those trees versus the one that wants to restore the site? That's a decision that the tree commission should be making at that point in time before it goes any further.
So a couple things. First of all, I think the first thing, if I was making the application, the first thing I would do is make a trim and tree removal request, because that doesn't cost me anything. So if I get denied on that, but my request is for view restoration, then I can decide whether or not to submit the $500 request. One of the things that that I've learned over the years is even an expert will address or give you a different opinion depending on the perspective and the question that you ask. So if somebody says, I would like the tree removed on man-made lake to restore my view, I'm a little confused what the arborist role would be, because a tree removal is cut it down or don't cut it down. So what's the value of the arborist in cutting it?
Maybe none.
Well,
Go ahead.
it could be that,
It could be the age of the tree, like you said.
hypothetical, but it could be that the citizen who requests the tree says something like, that's not the value of the tree, that's an ugly tree, it's half dead, you know, whatever, you know, there are ants in it or whatever, right? And that's when we need the arborist to come out and say, well, that's true, this is a valuable tree, or, you know.
I guess the basis of my question is, if you're trying to reestablish a view, then it's cutting of some sort. So I guess the arborist their recommendation could be, or the value of the arborist could be on the age of the tree, trying to project what was there at the time of purchase, and then what would be appropriate in order to establish, as a for instance, the arborist may say, well, to establish the view, you need to lop the limbs off of one side of that tree, and at that point, you really need to take the tree down. So I guess I can understand that.
But I think what I'm hearing here, in your situation, or hypothetical situation, are you're creating a view for the citizen or this landowner. What we're doing here is reestablishing something that existed and is drummed over the years. But it's a request to reestablish something. Now, when you're building a new house, when you're saying, geez, I might not get rid of view if I get rid of those 3 trees on Man-Made Lake.
Yeah,
Something different.
that's really important that we draw the line there, because this cannot open up for people to do that. You buy a property, and then afterwards you request or demand that those trees are going to be removed.
I'm playing devil's advocate, but Sam Products has owned the land where the oil well is on the north side for at least 100 years. I bet there's not a 100-year-old tree across the street from that. They could make that request. The arborist may say, to establish that view, you'd have to cut all the trees down. That's why you're saying, but we want the opportunity to say, we understand that opinion, we understand that conclusion, that's not good for the community.
It's not reasonable.
Because I know there's been discussion about developing that land, so I'm trying to think through hypotheticals.
Would we be able to incorporate something like, based on the determination of the arborist, any vegetation, tree, whatever that is deemed to be more than 20 years old, cannot be taken down? To reestablish a view? See, how are we gonna really say what something looks like here? The guy could say, I've been here 25 years, there was nothing there, I had a great view, I've let it go, and now I want my view done, and we're gonna say, well, we don't think it was there. Who's gonna make that decision? Say he's lying or he's not
I
lying?
think again, it comes back to the tree commission and do a reasonable test on what's being requested. And there again, compare it to the good of the other citizens in the area and what tree removal is gonna be, what it's gonna look like from the other side. You know, what is that tree removal gonna look like when you're looking at it from the other side of the tree versus this tree, this side?
Or 15 feet left or right,
Right.
you know, whatever.
Exactly. It's gonna come down to what's reasonable and go from there.
The 2 words, restored and reestablishment, are problematic.
Yeah, that's the way I read it too, the reestablishment, because, again, who is gonna determine, if we do determine something, we're determining our own personal views. If there's nothing in front of me, this is where it was or wasn't. Now, who am I to say, no, I don't want it cut down? And this guy says, well, it wasn't there 25 years ago.
Right.
How am I gonna argue with him and say, hey, I wanna reestablish it because I bought that house and that tree wasn't there? Well, how are we gonna prove that just because it looks nice now and we don't wanna take it down?
We gotta work on 1C so that it's not so open to everyone's.
Yeah, again, we're trying to make this simple too,
Right.
not too complicated.
Right.
Well, and I think also the statement, the loss of view is due to overgrowth and lack of trimming, probably eliminates almost every request. I mean, what is overgrowth? A tree grows. That's its job in life. So what is overgrowth? And the only trimming that we really do on trees is just the canopy underneath for park usage on city property. Or mowing, sometimes maintenance, but anything high up doesn't get trimmed.
Or trimming if it's gonna be a safety hazard.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe there's verbiage that we could craft in 1C that would give us what we want without, you know, the problems that we're talking about.
Well, my recommendation would be for you to come up with whatever language that meets the intent of the program you're trying to create. And then when it goes through the attorney's review, there'll be a lot of recommended changes to make sure that every section meets each one, that it's clear, that it's legal, that it's consistent with current ordinance and so forth. And after that review, I would bring it back to you to then look at the attorney's recommendations and how that reads, and I would expect you guys to have an opinion on that before it took the step after.
So again, to move things along, one of the things that I'd suggest you're going to need on the application form, you need to say, when did you purchase this property? When did you take possession of this property? It's got to be there. You got to, So, because that's everything else is going to go, right?
I'd rather use this laptop.
I can do that.
What, I don't know how to get the screen to here, what's up there.
Again, I think the committee, you've done a great job. You've got us a long way. We had good discussions. My recommendation is that we send this back to committee to work on the verbiage a little bit as it relates to the restoration or the, what was the word, Sam, that we had? Reestablishment and restoration.
Yeah.
Let's work on that a little bit. Can you report back to us then for our October meeting? Would that be okay, Jerry?
Yes, we'll give it a try. We should never do it.
I really think that you've done a good job with this. I think we're going in the right direction. This will also give Jeff a chance to, do a little bit of light reading in his spare time and all that.
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
Without objection, then we're going to return this to committee and you'll report to us at our October meeting. Is that okay? Now, the other thing I need to say is we did establish a adjournment time of 6. It's coming up on that. We do have a guest here from our city engineering firm that out of respect for him and their time, I'm willing to stay and listen to this presentation.
I am too.
All right?
I am too.
Everybody okay?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to take another hour or anything, but we want to just talk about capabilities, show some examples, and I think it's going to be positive information.
And again, I really appreciate this. And
LiDAR, is that what we're talking about?
So,
I don't have to run anywhere, but
so with me, if you don't mind, I'll introduce him.
Please.
This is Lucas Richardson. He works with the Spicer Group, who is the city's contracted engineer of record. He works out of the office here on River Street and does a lot of work for our utilities, streets, and other departments on our geographical information system, or GIS. He's getting logged in so he can show us some examples, but as we've built this platform, as I described to you last month, we have been learning more and more ways that we can use it. The police department's now using it to map out the blighted properties and to track different information on that. So we've been expanding that, and with the suggestion of coming up with a tree inventory, and at your request, I asked him to come here and just talk a little bit about how GIS could be utilized for that purpose.
Hello,
Lucas.
Commission. I'm Lucas, as Jeff said. So I'm gonna give me just 2 minutes here, and I'm gonna open up a bunch of things, and it's gonna look like a lot of stuff.
what you're opening up right now, though, is this is inherent to this software, right?
Yeah, so I guess a little background to add to Jeff's point. ArcGIS is a program and mostly utilized online that can pretty much map or track or help conduct surveys for anything that you want. Anything that you want it to be. The city, as of right now, as Jeff said, uses GIS to track blight for the officers. The DPW tracks all of the sanitary, storm, water, utilities. We have contour maps, parcels, everything that you can imagine or think of can be mapped in GIS. I'm going to pull up one thing that will just explain all the different things that the city has right now, which is the work map that is used on a day-to-day basis. It might take a few minutes to load.
I use this map every single day, and at least half of my staff uses it probably every single day as well.
So as you can you see it on your screens in front of you? Okay.
Mark, can you turn?
Oh, you got it right here. You turn that on. Just push the
Yeah.
bottom, very bottom.
Bottom right. Okay.
Very bottom. Right there.
So every color,
It's coming up right
shape,
now.
and squiggly line, circle.
So, yeah, so we have a aerial imagery that was updated this last year. That gets updated every, I don't know, 5-10 years, depending on when the county flies it and the city purchases a portion of that. All the dots and lines are all the different assets that the city has, from sewer to water to storm. And then all the squares are all the properties that are approximate property lines. So the city can go in here, they'll click on whatever they want to look at, and they can say, hey, let's look at this manhole right here. And it has a bunch of things that we have collected over the time, from the size to elevations to a risk, a likelihood of failure of the structure. We even have manhole scans, which are a three-dimensional laser scan of the structure. What else? We have photos, so these are like a report form that we used when we were inspecting them, the actual condition of the photo, or of the manhole, and then some other location things that we tied in with the
But it's all
asset.
stored in one place, right
And it's
there.
all stored from one click. So I guess that's a little background. Everything can be just as you would see it in person, just from.
So zoom
from a
in,
map.
zoom in closer to City Hall.
So this is-
So as an example, you can see City Hall, and the north is up on the screen. You can see all the trees around it. Now, keep in mind that when we fly, the county flies the aerials, they do it in the spring before the leaves come out, so you can see more detail. But if we had a tree inventory, there could be a dot or some symbol for every one of those city-owned trees, and you could click on that dot, and then it would show you a menu of all the information that you've collected or that's been entered. So like, I think it was Vidar was saying, the type of tree, the approximate age, the health, the
Yeah.
whatever.
So, and then another piece to this too is, how does it get in here, right? So for all of these assets, they're a combination of two things. They have been either surveyed and then, or constructed, and we built it and then surveyed. For the most of the city, it was surveyed with what's called LiDAR, so a LiDAR truck, where we drove around the city and we then extracted all these points and then had the surveyed locations and then built the GIS, built the line work, and associated all that information into GIS. Another way there's two other ways that you can add information in here. It could be free drawn, it doesn't have to be an exact location. We could just click where we want, or you could use a little less expensive way of collection, which would be like an RTK unit, which the city and both us utilize on construction projects or on a day-to-day operation. Like, for example, the water department, if they find a new valve that maybe wasn't in a record drawing, but they need to collect it, they'll just go out there real quick with their piece of equipment and just add it right into GIS.
We found one on the last water main break last week.
And it's an everyday thing. The GIS is certainly not perfect, which is another reason to have it. It's ever changing. in preparation of this, we did do a little bit of research for what Esri is the software company, what Esri actually has made templates, and they have actually this extremely complex tree management solution, which I was a little bit shocked to see, but I'm just going to scroll down here. You don't have to know what any of this means, but each one of these rows is another map, a solution, a survey, a document, a model, something. And there's like hundreds of templates that we could use to start something like this.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
You would definitely not have to reinvent the wheel. However, I would certainly recommend reviewing, what gets implemented, because I'll just open one of these up. I think it's this one. Nope, it's the tree map. Tree management. See, there's so many things I can't even remember which one it is.
So we would choose those kinds of things that we would want to have in our particular data.
Yeah, I would recommend definitely doing that, because if you have too much to take care of, it's too cumbersome,
So what we did,
Get inputted into this again.
So you either survey it or you collect it with using a mobile device, or you can just sketch it and be approximate.
Are there mobile devices that we could use?
You could use a smartphone, you could use an iPad with service, however you need a license.
each of the things that Lucas just said has a different degree of accuracy.
Right.
Yes.
So if we want exactly where the tree is, you survey it. If you want to be within a couple feet, you can use an RTK, which is basically a GPS location tool. If you're okay with 5 feet, 10 feet, then you could use your phone.
Well, I think the phone is more accurate at that, though. From my experience, I just tested it out a little bit with the...
There are times where it puts me right where I am, and there are times where it puts me across the street. But that said, it also can, as that data gets downloaded, somebody like Lucas, and we would have to pay Spicer for that service, but they could also make adjustments with that. So that image or that location could be corrected as it's being put in.
And we could always go back to that too. It could be just 100 points get put on there by a phone, and then we say that it's not, those points aren't surveyed, and then we can go survey them and then just move those points that already have the data. You could do it like that too.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't think we have to be down in the, to that level of accuracy.
Yeah. I think a phone would work is the point, but the different levels are the degree of accuracy.
And, what we're looking for here is to get an inventory of existing trees on public property, and that's, for the entire city of Manistee. And that's going to take quite a while to do, but by the same token, yeah, there's a good one right there.
Yeah, so I was just playing around with it because I personally haven't used this tool yet, so I was wondering what it would do. And so you could add a tree in here, and you could populate, the type of tree, the diameter, I'm not a biologist, so I'm going to get some of this stuff, but anything about a tree you could populate in here. You could throw a picture in there, which might help your previous discussion about a timestamp. This is what the tree looked when we did our survey.
The important thing is that you can customize this.
Yes.
So the templates exist, we can eliminate stuff, we can add stuff, and you can make it so that it's a pop-down menu. When my staff does it, we use the iPads, and they use a pop-down menu. So every time we go to a fire hydrant and do any type of work on that, they can go to that asset. They can say, we did this maintenance, we painted it, we flushed it, we did whatever, but it's all pop-down menus and it's very easy. Close it, save it to the cloud.
And you can also create assignments or like a survey of that too in this program, and they have some of that set up, and we can tweak these or make our own to where, you know, for example, this one, it looks like it's a criticality assessment of that tree, I guess. And like we
When
were
would
saying,
you use an assignment?
I don't, maybe,
So Jerry's out, says, boy, somebody really needs to look at this because I think it's a safety hazard.
right,
Could he make an assignment like
Yep.
that?
You got a drop-down capability there, you got something to select from, so, yeah.
yeah, it looks like
Hazard removal,
it's inspection or something, stump removal.
Bees
And you could
nest.
also create like a request, like a data request to, if there hadn't ever been work there, or if it was a important tree or something like that, a citizen can maybe make.
That
a
feels more
request.
like a park usage or a university or something where
yeah.
it's a reporting tool.
There's another one in here I saw too. So, and like we were saying too, this display that you see, you can have right, and it's the exact same on my iPad here. So it's nothing different except for a different device. You obviously need cell service for it, however, but and then the account that you would need, it could be just an additional account to what the city has, and I think the editing license for mobile devices something like $200. around
So what I would have to do is purchase an account, and whoever is doing this collection would have to use that account. And we would put restrictions on that, so you can't get into all of the rest of our data.
Right.
So we would try to make that account very restrictive for this purpose. But if every one of you wanted to do it, you would have to log in through that same account. And that would give you all the same rights, or anybody else that we use to collect it.
I mean, the vision for this would be, like we've talked about, you know, is to get maybe a Boy Scout troop, or who knows, a garden club, you know, those kind of things, volunteer organizations to just
Sure.
start this process. This is not gonna be done overnight. Pardon?
High school
High
kids.
school kid?
But whoever we use would have to
Yeah.
access
Right.
one account.
But what we'd want to do is come up with a simple template that says, this is what we need to know about these trees.
Yeah, very simple,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you could,
No, I had the question, if we go out with a mobile device and register these trees, do we then log into the account so that the information goes in instantly?
yes, it's automatically populated. You have to do it like that, actually.
Great.
It's the only way to do it.
The other way that you could do it without logging in would be you'd have to manually write down all that information and then go back and populate it, which is
backwards.
doing it twice, so.
Without giving the account out to everybody that's even doing this, would a group of people be able to give it to, let's say, one of us, and then we just forward it to you, rather than everybody have all these people, you know, getting in the account number, just to minimize that?
Well, that's the important thing is, it's $200 for a license. So we would have to buy another license, and that account would have to be shared by whoever's doing the collection. And can they be used at the same time? Can you and I both be logged into that account?
Yeah, you'd have, I think, like 5 or 6 people can use it at the same time.
So you have a limited group that can access it simultaneously.
I don't think it would be something that you'd want to give out to the public, like it wouldn't be a username stuff.
Thing is, anyway, if you got a group of, say, high school kids that go out and start doing this, just for sake of argument, would it be better for them to give that information sent to me or anybody else first, then we would pass it on to you? So that everybody doesn't have this account number going out there? Because how are we gonna do that then?
Well, we would have to restrict that account so it's protected.
Yeah.
The rest of the data in that database is protected.
Okay.
So the only thing they could do would be to input tree stuff. That would be the only access that account has. So to reduce the amount of additional work, it's better to have the person literally standing at the tree, type in the information, it gets uploaded, it's in the database, you move on to the next tree. And say it's me doing it that day when I'm done, and then it's your turn tomorrow or whatever, however you line that up. You log into that account on the app on your phone, and then go do your work, and then you log out when you're done.
It's simple.
It's simple.
Dennis, I don't think you'd have more than 3 or 4 people at any one moment doing it anyway.
Right.
You'd be lucky to find 3 high
Well,
schools.
I'm just looking for a safety,
Yeah.
question of safety issue if you pass this out to a lot of people, that's all.
You know, Jerry, you might get like NHS students that have to get,
Exactly.
community service hours. They would love to do this.
Yep.
Science, kids, you know.
Yep, oh, I
Yeah.
can see that.
But depending on the information you want, I would recommend doing some sort of a training, because I personally couldn't name what every species of trees are out in those city streets.
And
That's another thing that the app can do now, the iPhone can do, to identify the tree.
Take a picture.
Has anybody ever found a free one?
I have one, yeah.
That's the.
I've always been looking for a free one, and they always want to
It's
charge
the
me.
photo app on an iPhone. I cannot talk about the Android,
I got an iPhone.
but an iPhone.
It's amazing.
Photo app
Hook me up, I'll love you forever.
of the leaves, and when you look at the picture, you just flip up on it, and it will say identify. And you get, how accurate it is.
Wish I had.
I put you in the ballpark.
When we leave, will somebody show me that outside on like one of the maple trees? Okay, that'd be
Wish I had
great.
that app when I was taking dendrology 45 years ago.
So that'd be great. I mean, if there's, but maybe a little training for whoever you're having doing it,
I think that,
making sure they understand how to use it. And, I mean, we can help out with that
This
too.
is,
However, if I could add, you could just have somebody collect it all and say, there's a tree here, and take a picture, and then they move on. And you could go back and just populate that simple data. That you wouldn't really need a whole lot of training.
If you don't identify the species, you mean?
Yeah, you could always go back and just identify what you wanted to add to it
sure,
from the picture.
yeah.
but
That's not always easy though.
I'm thinking that this is something that would obviously take a long time, but we could get started. Say we started with the trees that were planted this year. Just as one thing, 50 trees or whatever. And then every time, and then your people, when they cut down a tree, would log that information, right? No?
Well, they would have to, when they cut them down, they would have to.
Yeah.
Because then we would have to update the database for that, yeah.
So then, over time then, when we work on this for maybe a couple of years, we can start to create reports, right? Say, for the last 5 years, we have planted 200 trees, we lost 198 on the cost.
Yeah, I was misunderstanding you from the beginning. Once the database is created and to keep it accurate, every time we planted trees, we would need to update those. And then every time we do a cut or a removal, we would need to update those.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's pretty cool. If you started at one side of the community and you were working on this project and, cut it into sections, we can put it up on that map and you can see the progress of that, and you can see where we still need to do the center section, but we've got the west side done and the east side's working. So the viewing that stuff is pretty interesting.
Well, it sounds like this is a great software, great system for us to utilize. Now, what we need to do now is work up a template with with the drop downs. I mean, the drop downs are it, because we don't want to do
Simplifies it.
typing when you're out in the field. You just select and move. And
Can you combine, you had so many, you said hundreds of different things in there. Can you pull certain things out of there, make your own template?
Yeah, so how it works is they're called a layer. So the layer can have what's called fields, and those fields are all the drop downs that you can create.
Oh, okay.
So those can be whatever you want, from a date to a photo attached to a form. You know, you can make them however you want. So yes, you could just take those from one to another.
So I think you guys had started about this when it was brought up, but, you know, before the next meeting, I would come up with those things that you think would be valuable as far as the data to collect, and quite frankly, the less information, the faster it goes. But I think if you're gonna go through the process and invest the time, then make sure you get everything that you want and need.
Great idea. So along those lines, if I could, Sam, could I impose upon you would you work up, you know, a template?
Sure.
You know, idea, what we should be asking for in this initial survey of the inventory?
The drop down.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, what each drop down should be as far as you can see, and then we'll bring that to the next meeting in October.
Sure.
That way we can move from there and do that. Lucas, you had something?
Yeah, and just a reminder too, it can always be deleted or added to.
Right.
So it's not permanent, you know, you can always tweak it.
Yeah, but one of the things I'd like to do is get a well thought out start.
Yeah.
And go from there and get this thing kicked off, because I think this is another point. It's gonna take years, you know, to get it to a meaningful point, but by the same token, once we've got a template in place, once we got a system in place, and we, you know, for example, I get a Boy Scout that wants to get his Eagle Award, and he needs a project, this is a perfect project, you know. And then I also see it, the science classes at the high
I
school.
can see a bio teacher.
Yeah.
Sure, it's teaching.
Holy crumbs.
Oh, yeah.
Now, taking time and doing that, this is, and then we've got, you know, other organizations in town. You know, we've got like you say, the garden club, the folks from, you know, Manistee Proud or whatever they call it, you know, that are working down on the Riverwalk. So, all right.
I did find one
Yes.
form too about your last discussion, this tree request form that you were talking about. There is something like that already made in here too, to where you could have that information that's being reported to you, you could track it in here too. Not from, you wouldn't have the resident do this, I wouldn't think, but you could just populate it in there.
Maybe something that when the tree trim request comes in and all that and it's approved, and then maybe Katie could be the one to do, that's how she finishes the process.
So at the last city council meeting, actually last Tuesday, council approved the purchase of software that goes it called? See it, click it, fix it, or something like that. But it works with our website company, and it will basically provide a mobile app that every citizen can simply download on their phone, and the city will have to customize that app for our usage. But as an example, a trim request could be reported through there, and it shows your location with GPS. You can add a photo if you like. So I think there's some more technology that should help us in this process in the future. You know, there could be, you could report blight that way. You could report a sidewalk crack or some vandalism or something like that. So,
Or one of your favorite things is pothole.
I'm honestly not gonna, I'm gonna fight not to put that on there, because that's,
You have a lot of data points.
Yeah, too much population.
Well, I would be careful
But
putting
each-
sidewalks on there too.
for what?
Putting
Sidewalks might be
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the difficulty with the sidewalks is the sidewalks are the responsibility of the property owner adjacent, not the city.
Yeah, I know, but the city assumed it 50 years ago, so who's gonna change that?
Well, that's not what the ordinance reads.
I know it.
All right,
I'm
is there
doing
any
it in
other
spite of the
discussion?
ordinance.
Lucas, thank you so much for your time and for enlightening us on this. I'm very excited about it, and this is great.
Yeah,
So-
no problem. I could,
Simon, Sam, you're going to work up a template that we'll discuss at the next meeting? That's great. Is there anything else? Any other business, any other announcements? Let's just start. Sam, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, it was a very good meeting. I enjoyed it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gary?
Nothing more for me.
Dennis?
I'm good.
Peter? Okay, if nothing, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Could you stop recording?